do keep those questions and give them to me at the end. I'm really eager to hear your thoughts and your memories and your questions and all of that. So again, my name's Annelise Heniz, and I'm in the history program at Stanford. And before we get started today, I just would love to get a show of hands. Raise your hand if you know Mahjong, if you're familiar with it, if you've played it, maybe grew up with it, even if you don't play it yourself. Okay, great. And so it looks like we've got a nice mix of people who are familiar with the game and for those who, for whom it's new. So just in case you don't know already, Mahjong, what is Mahjong? Mahjong is a game, and it's played by 4 people using tiles here, instead of cards. And you play it somewhat similar to Rummy, but there are lots of ways of playing Mahjong. And there's a big distinction between American Mahjong, which is run by the National Mahjong League, and the various ways of various Asian styles. And one of the biggest differences that you use a rule card in American Mahjong. But all of these are different from what you might have a lot of people come through the exhibit being familiar with Mahjong through the online or computer-based games. They might think, oh yeah, I know Mahjong because I play the solitaire matching tiles game on my iPad. That's a different game. It's the same aesthetic. They use the same designs on the tiles, but the way that you play it is totally different. And an important distinction is that that game is a solitaire game, but this game, the physical game of Mahjong, is always with other people. So Mahjong is a game. During the 1920s, it was also a cultural phenomenon in the United States. And throughout its history in the US, from the 1920s through the 1960s, which is really when my research focuses on, it's been a tool to build community in various ways. And I have some sample tiles from various kinds of 1920s tiles here that feel free to pass around, feel them. Just please make sure I get them back at the end. So this is a set from the 1920s that we can kind of just go down these basic suits using the terms that we use in English and American Mahjong. What's that top row? Cracks. Next one. Dots. Bams. Winds, or the cardinal directions, the dragons, the honor tiles, and then the last one. Flowers. Yeah, exactly. So this is a 1920 set. What's missing compared to the sets that you play with American Mahjong today?
Jokers.
Exactly. In 1961, the National Mahjong League introduced jokers into official American play for the first time. So that's a difference that you'll see now. Of course, they use 8 jokers, but the numbers of jokers changed over time. So 1920 sets don't have these jokers, but later sets do. So my own scholarly interest began when I lived for a year in China before starting graduate school. And this is a picture of the first Mahjong game I ever got to experience, of a friend who had learned from her grandfather, whose grandfather was from Shanghai, taught us a very, very basic version of Chinese Mahjong, very basic version. But I instantly gravitated towards it because of that sensory feel. It was really beautiful. It feels great in your hand. It sounds great. And there was these, Mahjong was everywhere. As I traveled around China, I just saw it bring people together in lots of different ways. And this is just in the middle of a street. These are people who work in different shops all on break together, just coming together in the street for a quick game of Mahjong. This is actually, you'll notice, this is 3 women and 1 man. He's very sensibly wearing a hat because it's hot out, regardless of whether or not it's pink. And you'll see just scenes like this, kind of pickup games all the time. Also see huge courtyards of particularly retired men and women playing together. They might be playing men only, women only, or they might be playing together. So I saw this a lot. I was interested in the game. But I also knew that there was this American history and that the American history was different. And I was interested in how that happened. And it turns out that a lot of people have asked the question of how did this game come to the United States, how did that history change, but no one had actually done scholarly research to find that out. And so my research has been a really wonderful adventure that's taken me across a largely uncharted landscape. No one was archiving Mahjong specifically, or even if it was in an archive, they weren't necessarily marking it because they didn't perceive it as important. So I've gotten to go to lots of different places like the Parker Brothers Archive. Parker Brothers sold Mahjong sets in the 1920s, and the archive is actually just a room full of old games right next to the factory floor where they're still making board games. So it really smells like paint in this room. And I've gotten to talk with the granddaughter of one of the founders of the daughter of one of the founders of the National Mahjong League, whose mother had kept a scrapbook that she still had in a cardboard box. And I've also gotten to interview over 50 people about their memories. And so one of the things that I'll ask you is if you or if people you know have memories that you want to share, positive or negative, about Mahjong, or if you have photographs or other memorabilia, particularly, again, before the 1960s, please let me know. I have my card here. Please take one. Give them to people you know. I'm always looking for more subjects, especially those maybe in their 80s and 90s who really have memories that go farther back. So the main theme that you'll see in my talk today is focused around community. And again, there's various ways of seeing that. So the story of Mahjong and its arrival in the United States is actually starts in the 1920s. And we're going to spend some time in the 1920s today, and the exhibit, you'll notice, if you haven't gotten to see some of it, a lot of the stuff that is in there is from the 1920s, and that's because that's the root of the game's history in the United States. So what trajectory might you assume? A lot of people assume that the game came with Chinese immigrants in the 1800s. Maybe it slowly spread, but it came with them from Canton. In fact, the story is quite different from that. Our story starts in the 1890s in Shanghai. The game was actually a much more recent game than most people